Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, today I wanted to give you a rundown into the 9 hours of hearings that took place into Libra in the US last week. So over 2 days, we first had the Senate Banking Committee and then the Congress House Committee. Now, the first day was a 2-hour session, and that was a bit of a bashing session of Facebook around privacy and that breaches and respect of users. And why are you getting into this huge new venture when you can't even run Facebook, to our liking? So I thought the second day was far more productive. That was the 7-hour hearing. They were well prepared, better questions, and really progressed the conversation, dived a bit deeper. So let's get into it. What were the main themes that were asked? So first up was, what is Libra? Their understanding of a stable coin or a basket of currencies was fairly limited. Now, these are pretty new concepts, but if you've heard about the IMF and their special drawing right, that is a basket of the world's most popular currencies with different weightings. Now, that's similar to what the Facebook Libra sounds like it's going to be. They're talking about the US dollar having the heaviest weighting. But the idea is, if one currency goes up, the other goes down a little bit. They sort of offset each other. It should be less volatile and overall more stable than picking one currency to have as your stable coin. So then the next question becomes, well, is this some sort of investment product? If you're taking people's money and putting it in something else, there's regulations, around stable coins, but it sounds like an ETF, that basket of currencies you're creating. Maybe it's a security of some sort, and Facebook pushed back saying, no, this isn't an investment product at all. The next question becomes, well, what are you doing? Are you a bank? You're taking people's money, allowing them to spend, holding funds, that sort of thing. And again, they're pushing back saying, no, we're not a bank. So a lot of the questioning, well, what are you? Who regulates you? They're saying, we're happy to work with all regulators, but we don't know what we are either yet, but we're not a bank. This isn't an investment product. So, that conversation is still going on. Next up, we have the difference between Bitcoin, the open source nature of a lot of cryptocurrencies, versus a permissioned blockchain. So we know that so far there's 32 large corporations that have signed up. So how does the governance work? And they're saying that, everyone's allowed to participate, but at a $10 million cost to run a node, and so far Facebook have invited these large tech companies, many based in the US, it's not really the case that this is open to anyone. So a lot of questions around that, and if you are going to give these people banking services and your focus is the unbanked, well, what's the on-ramp and off-ramps? How do they deposit and withdraw cash, in a poor country in Africa, just because they've got this app on their phone? So a lot of that infrastructure questions aren't answered yet, and then it becomes, well, why are you doing this? You say you want to unbank, bank the unbanked, and you're 2 billion users around the globe. You're a non-for-profit. But why are these huge tech companies all coming together? There must be something in it for them. Now, they're talking about paying out dividends to the initial investors after all expenses are covered as a non-for-profit. But really, when these large corporations come together, and it was described as a cartel, there's got to be something in it for them. Now, they spoke about collecting data and strict KYC to use the Calibra wallet. Facebook saying that other people will be able to maybe build wallets on top of it eventually, but they're going to be very strict with their KYC and whatnot. At the same time, saying that they're not going to use customers' data, and if they ever went down that track, they would get consent. So maybe that's a long form that you just click on agree and no one ever reads that. But at the moment, they're saying that no, the focus isn't the data collection. But I definitely think that that is the ultimate goal, particularly with all these large corporations signing up. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was all the pushback about regulation, and this is an experiment, and do you vow not to proceed until all the regulatory measures are met? And Facebook did commit to that, which was very interesting considering they've even set up in Switzerland outside of the US. And the question is, well, why are you doing that? And they're saying, well, they lead the world in banking and finance and regulation. So, maybe the US is waking up to the fact that they don't have clear regulations yet and people are moving away. One of the most interesting topics they got into was the size of this experiment. And they're saying that it's not going to be competition for the US dollar or for sovereign currencies, but with 2 billion users, let's say the average amount is 10,000 in a Calibra wallet. Some people have a lot less, some people might have a lot more. That gets you to a $2 trillion figure pretty quickly. Now, that does compete with a lot of currencies around the world, particularly if you're in these developing nations that don't have great, strong currencies. If you're sucking money out and putting it into Libra, or even putting it into that basket of currencies that's not theirs, you're taking money out of their banking system, their financial system, and that is not going to be popular. That's why I've seen huge pushback from China and a few countries already, because I see this as huge competition. No other company in the world has a couple of billion users that might be using this system straight away. So the next thing to talk about was Mnuchin, and him saying in that interview after the hearing that cash is not used for illicit activity. And that was a big theme throughout it, that, Bitcoin, crypto, and Libra, it's going to be used for these illicit activities. But we know that cash is used there's a story out just today, 800 or 1,000 times more in money laundering. The banks are getting fined. This isn't a huge issue or use case for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, particularly if you control the on-ramps and off-ramps fairly well. But that is their main pushback at the moment. One of the most interesting statements was from Congressman McHenry, saying that what Satoshi built is this unstoppable force. Government can't get in the way and shouldn't get in the way. We should watch this develop and flourish. And I was not expecting such positivity from one of the congressmen there. So there was another great 5-minute clip from Congressman Emma talking about finally waking up. Bitcoin's been around for 10 years and now you guys finally decide to look into it because Facebook are doing it, but we're so far behind, you don't understand the technology. I'll link to both those clips in the description below. We also had our, infamous Congressman Sherman pushing back and calling it a Zuck buck. We need Mark Zuckerberg here answering questions. We know that he's trying to get into this for the money. He's a bit of a scumbag. So Professor Sherman, not a fan of cryptocurrencies at all. We also had the infamous shitcoin question come in from Congressman Davidson, and Melton Demers answered that really well about the difference between Bitcoin and established coins versus shitcoins, and thinking that Libra does fall into that category of a shitcoin. So look, interestingly, I definitely see that this is huge competition for banks, governments, companies in China like Alipay and WeChat. They're not going to let this in to capture market share off them. We saw the G7 come out and say that this is definitely a threat. So while this was still very early stages and it's an experiment that hasn't even started yet, it's just a white paper, there's already a lot of fear out there about, hey, what is this? It's going to capture market share. They're trying to dominate with this new sort of world financial system at a time when central banks are trying to pull their levers and keep control of the economy. So look, I don't see this going ahead anytime soon. I think there's going to be continually more pushback from different countries around the world. They do have a lot of money, deep pockets, good lawyers. So this is an absolute battle that's going to continue to be in the headlines. And I think it's bringing more people to Bitcoin and realizing the beauty of an open source, open blockchain. And I've done the video about Facebook versus Bitcoin as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed that summary. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around. Thanks for tuning in. Cheers.